I'm really excited about today's presentations. But I've lived in Indiana my whole life and taught there and was an administrator in Anderson and in Greenwood. So I'm super proud of the work that Indiana is producing, especially in this space. We know that it's not typical of what we see in other states across the country. So you all should be very proud of that work. But I'm going to kick it over to Megan. And if you want to share your screen, that's perfectly fine. I'm not sharing, so you should be able to just take the reins and get started.
Perfect. All right. So I'm Megan Donahue, and my project is focusing on inclusion in the classroom and specifically looking at our gen ed teachers beginning to incorporate this more into their classroom. So my agenda is just a little introduction, looking at my workshop goals, why this matters, mastery versus exposure, content connectors, modifying assignments, and then a planning session. So a little bit about myself. I'm Megan Donahue. I've been a special ed teacher for 4 years. I've spent 2 of those years teaching in Rhode Island before coming to Indiana. I love to read and watch sports, especially going to sporting events. So I'm excited to be able to begin doing that again. And I also enjoy painting. And I live with my sister, my older sister, Lauren, out here in Indiana, and she's the reason why I'm out here. So that's just a picture of her and I before a football game. Background, so just a little background at the school I teach and our ex-ed department. So I'm at Schmucker Middle School. This is our first full year of full inclusion. So having our certificate of completion students in math and language arts classes. We teach 6th through 8th grade students, and we house about 1,023 students. Our ex-ed department, there's 4 of us. For 6th grade, there's 43 ex-ed students. 7th grade, there's 47. And 50 students for 8th grade. Out of all of those students, we only have 12 certificate track students. And then us ex-ed teachers are only in the math and language art classes. So my goal for this was to create a professional development focused on our gen ed teachers who are beginning to have these students in their classroom, specifically science, social studies, math, and language arts teachers. So my goal overall is for them to understand what an inclusive classroom is and how to create their classroom to be inclusive. Allowing the general education teachers time to learn how to utilize the content connectors, and then give them time to create modified activities for these students. Just continued goals is for the gen ed teachers to be able to collaborate with ex-ed teachers, giving them time to be able to do that. And then for my colleagues to feel confident in supporting all learners in the classroom. So just moving forward, this is a 2-part professional development. The first part is just introductory and just kind of refreshing their minds to know what all of this means and how to do it. And then the second part would be giving them collaborative and planning time. So the first part, I think that's most important for these gen ed teachers is to understand why it matters, to continue to let them remember and know that this inclusive classroom would create a positive learning space for every student in the room, that all students are able to gain social emotional skills as well as academic skills, that inclusive classroom values diversity and creates a sense of belonging. I think it's very important for my colleagues to kind of remember these 4 things and even more things during this time, because this is a new thing for them. And so just to continue to remind them the purpose and the goal for an inclusion classroom. So just to give them a brief definition of what inclusion is, that it's a state of including or of being included within a group or structure. And then within the classroom, what it looks like, the definition for a classroom, some facts about it, and then examples of what it is that these students are in the gen ed classroom for 80% or more of the time. They're in the classroom the whole entire time, working on modified activities and participating in the classroom discussions, debates, and other activities at their skill level. It's also important for teachers to be aware of what it's not. So it's not just walking in the hallway with their peers or sitting in the classroom for attendance and then leaving to go into a different room that's off away from their peers. Those are just things that they need to know to remember in incorporating in their classroom. And then I found in preparing for this that a lot of our teachers didn't know what the content connectors were. So giving them the tool right there for them to then explore and look through, and then providing them time to think about how they can include these in their classroom, highlighting some things and providing them time to discuss and just explore, I think will be very valuable for them in our next coming school year and years to come. Will allow for them to be able to provide better activities for our certificate students. Modifying assignments was another thing that we wanted to focus on for these teachers, because a lot of the times we were finding that it was coming to ex-ed teachers and they needed it right away. And there's only 4 of us and never enough time for these things. So allowing them to understand what it means to modify assignments is one thing that is critical in order for an inclusive classroom to be successful. So modifying assignments is just making partial or minor changes to something to improve it or make it less extreme. And with this, I want them to think about how they can modify things in their classroom. So providing them examples of what modifications can look like is key for this to be successful. So I pulled some things that we've done for language arts with the 7th grade standards and then the content connector next to it. So this is just comprehension questions for our students. On the left is what the 7th grade students were doing, and on the right was what our certificate of completion students were working on. This group of students were, for our certificate track students, were a little bit of a higher level and were able to write in these boxes and fill out the information. Looking at this, you can't tell right away that it's modified. You have to look at it a little bit, and then you can see that some of the questions have been shortened and they don't have to answer as many questions. Another example was we did stations with slideshow. And so once again, the 7th grade standard is up there, being able to read a range of appropriate grade level texts. And then for our content connector, it's being able to comprehend a variety of grade level appropriate literature. Within these stations, they would click on it and there were articles to read, videos to read, and strategies for them to use while reading. For the certificate students, when they clicked on those, it was videos or videos of me reading the story to them or it being read aloud to them. And so when you're in the classroom, if you see this, it doesn't scream out to visitors that they're doing something completely different, because it's the same structure. It's just modified for those students to be able to succeed. And then another example for these teachers to see is kind of a bigger modification. So on the left, students were reading articles to find facts about the Statue of Liberty and answering multiple questions and working as a group. On the right, for the certificate of completion students, they read 2 articles and a video, and then they only needed to find 3 facts and write a paragraph conclusion. So they were still working on the same skill of finding things out about the Statue of Liberty to build their background knowledge. It just didn't have as many steps. And then another skill that is very important for these teachers to understand is mastery versus exposure. So mastery implies that students have mastered the content and can move on. And exposure is introducing those new ideas and experiences. Our students who are working toward earning a certificate of completion learn more from exposure. So providing all of those things like the Statue of Liberty articles, they're being exposed to that information and beginning to build background knowledge, but they're not going that 3 or 4 steps further than the other students in the classroom. And with the exposure versus mastery, having the teachers begin to think of what is the end goal that they want their certificate of completion students to get from those lessons. So the second part of this professional development would be planning time. So this would be later in the fall before we begin school, providing time for those teachers who are going to have these students in their classroom, time to meet with us ex-ed student teachers and their colleagues to collaborate and create lessons for their students. So my goal is for them to have their unit plans with them and use the content connectors to find ways to incorporate modified activities more in their classroom, and to remember that mastery versus exposure tool to remind them of what they need to expect their certificate of completion students in their classroom, and then to continue thinking about what is that end goal you want for our students to know when they're finishing that lesson or that unit. The goal for this time is for them to be able to have a toolbox of lessons already together and created just like they do for their other students in the classroom, so that it's not a lot of work in the long run. And when the lesson comes up, they don't have to reach out to us right away. In the fall, they'll have this created for them. And then time to give them to use the content connectors once again, and just continue to think about how these can be used in their classroom, but now taking it and actually creating stuff to use in their classroom. And then just providing them those examples again, so that they have access to it, so they can see the different types of modifications, how this one with the Statue of Liberty is very modified compared to these questions, how it's they're only answering 6, certificate students are answering 5. I also wanted to provide a spot that would be a place for these teachers to continue adding resources. So this one website, Super Teacher Worksheets, has a ton of worksheets on it that provide teachers with math, language arts, social studies, science things. Social studies, for instance, has worksheets for maps, and I know middle schoolers work on maps, so the social studies teacher can pull activities from that meets the content connector standard. And then the Google document underneath is just a side-by-side for social studies for the high school, actually. And the goal is to then kind of take that worksheet and allow for the middle school teachers to create something similar to that. I will open it. Let me switch that it shares this. There we go. Okay. Can you see that okay? Okay. So this is just an example of the content connector and their approach and what activity they're going to provide for the student. So our goal is for our social studies teachers to either create something like this so that they have something to go back to when it's time to do that unit, or have a working folder and document for them. Sorry, there's a bar stuck in my way, so now I can't get back to the presentation. All right, and then the goal is for the gen ed teachers to have access to this slideshow and can continue adding to either this slide or another document, just to continue collaboration throughout this school year. And then obviously giving the teachers some collaborative time with the whole ex-ed department so that they can work through and provide activities and tools before the school year starts so that they're prepared for their students. And then I think towards the end of this professional development, it's really important for all of the teachers to kind of come back together and discuss how they're going to incorporate the content connectors within their classroom and any activities they've come up with. I think the best tool is collaboration in a time like this when they're creating and beginning to do something new in their classroom, and knowing that they're not alone and that there's a team, I think is going to allow there to be success moving forward. And then obviously giving them time for questions and continuing that conversation. And then just my own final thoughts when completing this project. I was surprised at the lack of awareness of my colleagues that they weren't aware of how easy it is to modify assignments or the content connectors. And so overall, this project has allowed me to better serve the students within my classroom, but my school and corporation. And then providing these tools to my colleagues that can be used for years to come is really exciting. I think that, you know, we're starting at ground level 0, but we're building our way up. And I think providing this working time, even if they only get 1 or 2 activities completed, it allows them to maybe boost their confidence to feel like they can come to us and can collaborate and are able to serve and teach these students. Moving forward, I am excited that, you know, this project isn't ending today, that it's continuing, and that, you know, my colleagues are going to be given the content connectors and other tools that will be able to serve these students, and that these students are going to be able to be in just more than math and language arts and electives, that they're going to be in social studies and science classes moving forward. And then I think overall, the project has allowed for our school to begin to be able to allow certificate of completion students to not travel in small groups anymore, and to be able to go and be in classrooms that you know, will better serve them and all of our students. And that's it.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm off mute. Amazing work. That's really exciting to see all of the steps that you've taken, and the PD that you've put together looks fantastic. I just have a couple of follow-up questions, and other people, if you have questions, feel free to unmute and jump in here too. But
Sure.
so I love that you approached it with a shared accountability and just jumped right in and sort of empowered gen ed teachers to make those modifications, either, you know, planning them out ahead of time or even on the fly. I think a lot of times as special educators, like, we've owned that, and so then all of a sudden it's like we've somewhere along the way gen ed teachers thought that they weren't allowed to do that, or that they weren't able or capable, when in fact, of course, they know their content. It's almost just allowing them to understand the difference between a modification and accommodation. So I'm just curious, like, how did staff react to that? Like, when you approach gen ed teachers with kind of that concept of, hey, you know, you can do this too, and let me show you how. Like, what's the response?
I think it's 50-50. I think part of it, with it being new this year and then being COVID, I think teachers have been very apprehensive, but I think with the time to plan, I think they'll be more on board. I kind of solidified this idea when I actually had to quarantine waiting for COVID results for myself. And my gen ed teacher was like, well, what about our 3 certificate track students? Aren't you in charge of their curriculum? And I'm like, no, but like, I can help you. So that really kind of helped me be like, okay, we really do have to start from the bottom, and that's okay. And that's how we'll move forward. So I think letting the teachers, going back to the basics for them, I think is also going to help them be on board. But yeah, I would say 50-50. I think the teachers really enjoy having the students in the classroom, which is awesome and great. But I think they're apprehensive at the modifying of assignments, because I think they think it's a big task, when really it's sometimes just rewording or adding more visuals or partner work even. So I think this PD model will allow for them to see and be less fearful.
Great. And then my second question is, so you mentioned a 2-part PD session. Have you already delivered these PD sessions, or are these things you're looking for next year? And then I see you shaking your head no. So
yeah, so
what's your plan? Like, how are you delivering the PD? Like, do you have time at a school-wide PD, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so our goal, Lavon and I actually discussed this, is to meet at one of our staff meetings on end of May, towards the end of the school year, to do the first part, just like introducing what does it look like for all of our teachers, because hopefully eventually they will all have certificate students. And then when we come back in the fall to do the second part, the planning before the school year starts, hopefully. And then that will give them some time to collaborate and use their unit plans and the content connectors.
Cool. All right, I'm going to stop asking questions because I can probably keep going. But does anyone else have questions or feedback for Megan?
Well, I'll start. This comes from a really selfish place, but I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Our whole XED team here, and specifically Megan, we had these great plans kind of last spring, and then going into this year agreed we had to make some adjustments that that were just really tough. So I think being able to look at those things and the plan that Megan has in place, like I am really excited about it. And I think of getting teachers on board and helping them understand those things, I am really looking forward to it. And she has just done a great job getting this ready for us. And so with kind of the introduction this spring and then following up with work time next fall, like we've been going in a great direction. So I'm really excited to get some traction now that hopefully we can get back to a little bit more of normal life next fall. Yeah. I really appreciate her doing it. And it's been, just been a real leader in our XED department here.
Yeah. Great.
Amy, I'll second that and say that I'm just really excited for all of the work that's happening. The conversations, they have to start somewhere. And I think, Megan's really presenting, her team with a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities to collaborate and take what already exists and build upon it. So we're really excited to dive more into this, hopefully later this spring and then early next year, and just build our teams and have stronger teams. So great work, Megan. We're proud of you.
We are, Megan. We're really proud of you and happy that we're able to come in and see the work and get those conversations started. And I'm personally delighted that our assistant superintendent just popped in, Dr. Short. So as always, we're always here to support inclusion, Megan, and we're proud of the job that you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that to echo what everyone has said, the resources that you put together and the examples, like the concrete examples of what it looks like and how it can be done those are key. Those are what gets you to that next level of implementation, is being able to support that. One last question, just out of curiosity. What response have you had from students or from parents? Are they noticing that kids have more opportunities to engage in classes that they maybe didn't have access to before? Have you had any feedback from parents yet?
Not yet, no, but I know just looking at our gen ed kids with these students, they definitely have included them. We've had students participate in debates and things like that. And it's really nice to see the students take them under their wing without being asked to. But I'm sure our ex-ed parents notice, but haven't said anything, but definitely moving forward, I'm sure once they find out that they get to be in a science class next year, social studies class will really excite them.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be exciting because they'll respond. They'll be thrilled. So
yeah,
exciting stuff.
Amy, I can kind of speak to that for a minute. So sure. All of those students are fully included coming from our elementary setting. And so they are all familiar with each other and their peers when they go to middle school. And so the parents are so thrilled and happy to see that continue. It's something that they're familiar with, and to know that they can continue to have those opportunities in middle school is absolutely thrilling to them. And they're so thankful for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
I would just add one last thing too. Our high school students that are life skills are also included in a lot of gen ed classes, and we hear from those parents, and then beyond that, our young adult program from 18 to 22-year-olds. So those parents are very verbal about being able to be included, as you all know, sitting on this call, in those types of activities. So this is kind of our last link in our full-blown inclusion goal for our entire district, to start at preschool and end at 22-year-old aging out. And so we're really delighted to see that happen.
Amazing. Great.
Amy, if you don't mind,
sure.
I have to tell you, it's interesting. I've kind of seen this on both ends of the spectrum. And in terms of families who maybe move into our district, who are really used to and comfortable in a very secluded environment on the front end, inclusion feels Like they aren't really sure. There's some apprehension that comes with it. But I will tell you, after they've been involved, they would never go back. I mean, they would never trade back for what felt more comfortable, as opposed to, you know, what happens. And, you know, I can't tell you how proud I am of our entire ex-ed department and all of our teachers. They do just an amazing job for our kids, and the opportunities, and what they do to just showcase different abilities, I think is outstanding. And can't tell you how grateful I was when I was reading the General Assembly and, you know, some of the things that are happening in the budget, and for the increases for special education grants to go up 5% and then 10% in 23. It is about time. Like, I'm so excited that we're able to start, you know, we try so hard to stay within that funding, and then we fall short, and then we have to figure out how we're going to continue to support it. So, you know, just, I feel like we'll even be able to do more once we're, you know, funded appropriately. So that's hugely exciting. But I also wanted to thank you for hosting these meetings. I jumped in a little bit earlier in the morning, but was interrupted a few times. So I just kind of had it on in the background, and I didn't get the chance to pop in, and thank you for hosting it. But I will tell you that if and when you ever want to send anyone up here to see some outstanding, you know, inclusive activities and settings, we're happy to host you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. It's been an honor to be part of the project the last 8 years. And although I haven't worked with many of you directly, it's just been amazing to see the work across the state and how it's evolved in 8 years from, you know, virtually very little inclusion at any level for students with significant disabilities, and the certificate of completion didn't even exist, and to where we are today. So it has been truly a remarkable journey, and we feel so blessed to have been a part of that entire transition. And people have worked so hard, and that was before COVID, right? And then everything shifted, and we've completely, you know, reworked and rethought and worked hard, all in different ways. So yeah, Indiana's a lot to be proud of. This work is not happening with low incidence populations across the, you know, I mean, in pockets, but it's not prevalent across the country at all. So we have a lot to be proud of. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Megan. And I think next up is Anna. All right, Anna, whenever you're ready.
Okay, awesome. Well, my name is Anna Finley. I work for Greenfield Central School Systems. I've been with the junior high for 8 years now. And we have been a model site for the last 3-4 years. I started teaching content connectors when Project Success, I think maybe when you guys started and presented all that to us, my director at the time got us to those conferences. So I've been teaching content connectors for 7 or 8 years. I started in one subject, and this kind of grew from there. 4 years ago, I decided that I think it would be easier if the people who know the content better were helping me plan these lessons. So I started including my kids in geography class. So from there, we are currently going out for science and geography. We're teaching content connectors for both 7th and 8th grade in the classroom for math and reading in the self-contained classroom with gen ed peers in there helping. So that's kind of how we're working with things. And my presentation is really about planning for all, and this is geared for general education teachers. I work really closely with my teachers in planning, and that was one of the things that we struggled with. I know that Megan talked a little bit about the struggle to modify assignments at the last second. And so we decided this year our goal as a model site was to set up pre-planning like units at the beginning of each quarter. Well, because of COVID, I'm going to tell you. So our concerns were kids with significant disabilities have just having appropriate access to attainable curriculum while they're in the gen ed classroom, and time for gen ed and special ed teachers to plan together. So we wanted it to be appropriate and attainable for those kids in that setting. So we did not want just kids sitting in the classroom and not participating in meaningful instruction. We wanted active participation for all kids and assignments accessible for all students. And we wanted to make sure that the kids had communication access if they were unable to communicate verbally. So our plan was to meet quarterly to pre-plan the quarter. We were going to look at the key points of lessons. We were going to look for visuals that tied those in. We're going to work on vocabulary that my kids needed to know to understand the lesson. We're going to look at assessments, and then having those activities modified. Obviously, our problem was COVID. We still, even with that quarterly planning time, didn't have enough time to go through the whole quarter of work. But it did get us on a kickoff start, but it just wasn't enough time. And then with COVID, we didn't have enough sub coverage. So our planning quarterly didn't even work out once we started this year. We did the first quarter and that was it. So anyway, we were struggling to meet and plan, and we were doing things so fast that it wasn't as effective as it could have been. So we know if we spend time looking at all those bits and pieces, that it can really make the instruction meaningful for our kids and they're not just sitting in there. So this was my idea, was to create guiding questions to help the general education teachers modify units for students with significant disabilities. So I created a form, and I'm just going to kind of walk through this really quick, but you would send this to them. There's only 2 parts that are mandatory. That is their email and the title of the lesson. The email will shoot this back to them. They'll receive an email back with all their responses. So that's all they have to fill out. I did get some input from other special education teachers. I got input from gen ed teachers. I got input from our administration on this as well. So these are just questions to help a gen ed teacher create a unit without having a special education teacher sitting right next to them. So the first thing is for them to say, oh, we're doing this on this Indiana academic standard. And this is just a link to get to those. And then this is the content connector that aligns to it. And then they would compare those 2 things together. So they would see if they're similar, what their differences were. We've noticed that both in science and social studies, a lot of them are almost identical. And so that was really interesting in planning too, when they look exactly alike. I think in math and reading, it kind of varies more and narrows it down. But with both science and social studies, it's a little bit, I think, more broad, I guess. So we also wanted to pick 1 to 3 concepts or skills we want all students with significant disabilities to learn when we're looking at that content connector, when we're looking at those academic standards. What do we want all kids to know? So that includes our kids with significant disabilities. So really for my gen ed teachers to say, okay, what do I want them to know when they finish this unit? So that's what I want them to write there. Then we talk about vocabulary words. What do they need to know prior to the lesson? And I always tell them, like, no more than 5 words, because if you get too many, they're not going to retain them. So we try to pick out 5 words, no more than 5 words, for them to remember. And then we pair an image with that that would help them recall what that information meant. And then what images do you need to represent each key point or skill? So my history teacher has been amazing at this. She will just have her lesson and she's teaching the whole class. But then when it comes to one of those 1 to 3 points that she wants my kids to learn, she'll just put that visual in her presentation. So my kids are seeing it, the other kids are seeing it. It's beneficial for all of them. It's that UDL piece. But that visual is paired with that key point so my kids see it. And then would a communication board for this unit be helpful? We have a lot of kids that are nonverbal right now that are just in our building. So that's something that we just really want to make sure that they have a chance to participate in class as best as they can. And then how do we visually present things? So we talk a lot about graphic organizers, like thinking about a device to help them remember something, a video that can bring the point home. So as we sit there and brainstorm, those are things that we think about. What can we do to have multiple practice attempts in that repetition for those key points? Because we want them to know those 1 to 3 things. So when they're doing their lessons and they're practicing their skill, that my kids keep going back to those 1 to 3 points so they remember. And then this is just talking about participation, like how can you include kids or a student with significant disabilities have an opportunity to share. So I just put some ideas here. They can add their own. How will you know if a student with significant disabilities knows the information? So it helps them think through, like, how do I know if they really are going to get this and know this? So it helps them respond there. And then they would just click next. And then this is the part, they have 2 choices to modify assignments in this one lesson. So if they're doing a race response or written essay or written response, if they click this, it'll give them modification ideas, note taking, a reading assignment or article to read. We've had comic strips a lot here at the junior high, so I put that on there. Making a slide presentation, or if you are only doing one. So there's 2 choices here. So let's say we're doing note taking, and then this gives them an idea. So students with significant disabilities could have notes already filled in for them with pictures of the key points to circle, have notes with less fill in the blank spots, and it just gives them ideas. So they can select one. And then on the next one, it says this is a modification idea too. So they had note taking, and let's say they were making a slide presentation. So then they would click next, and then it would just give them ideas on each of those areas if they click it. So we just click one. And then this just talks about environmental factors. One of the things that one of my teachers came up with that felt like we needed to include was we're looking at lighting and sound and where they're sitting in the classroom, and if they're in labs or activities that are their touch is going to be affected. So this is just something to kind of remind them that they can talk with an OT or a special educator if they needed ideas on why maybe some environmental things might be happening. So, and then once they submit that, it will send them an email back with all the things they filled out and kind of just a lesson for them to look at. So then I don't have to be there for every single modification. I think my history teacher, she's like already kind of figured it out. Once you do like 4 or 5 on your own, you don't even need to go back to this guiding document, but I think it just helps gen ed teachers think through without us being there. And look, it just popped back up in an email. So the information came through. So that is it. That's what I created for my capstone project.
You say that is it, like it was some small insignificant thing that you just threw out there to us. It's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it'll be helpful for teaching new people, especially that don't have the experience. And honestly, we can't be there for all of them, right? All the time. It's just impossible. So
yeah. I love how you've combined, kind of like I said with Megan too, like you've taken a shared accountability approach, right? And putting some leaning on the gen ed to do some of the modifications, but you've also built this in a way where they've got all the supports that they need. They've got ideas. It's obviously a very UDL centric focused tool, so that you're looking at ways to present material, ways for students to express themselves. I mean, all the engagement things. I mean, you've got all the components there, which I think are really helpful. I'm going to guess this will drive teachers thinking even in for their gen ed students or for the students with disabilities that don't have significant disabilities, because a lot of like you said with the visuals, a lot of things that will be critical for students with significant disabilities are also helpful for other students. So
absolutely. Yeah.
This is great. One question I had, actually a couple questions, but they both revolve around the same thing, and that's the communication back and forth. So I know, like with COVID, you had to, I'm sure you had to shift in how you were meeting with teachers. So I'm curious about what that looked like. And then also maybe it's part of that is how do you, once the teacher completes this form and they get the email, how do they share that back with you? So two-part question, I guess.
Okay, well, honestly, it's been a struggle. I mean, that's why I did this as my capstone project, because it has been such a struggle. My science teacher had the best idea, and we've been using it this year, is a planning document. It's on Google Sheets, and then he puts in his assignment that he has, and he tags everything on there. Pretty much everything is virtual, has to have access virtually anyway. So he just put like a link in there so I could look at it, and then I can put the modified assignment right next to it. So it'll be nice, like next year when we come back to this time, we'll have all these assignments right lined up to each other, the modified included. So that was a way that we kind of did that. The history teacher and I, once I got her rolling on this, she was able just to take it and run. Like, I think it probably just depends on the topic and what you're talking about, and maybe the teacher's personality. But I think they can obviously forward this email to you, right? Once they get it, if they want to. Sure. With my gen ed teacher for history, she just includes it, and like she'll share things back with me, but she just presents it in class. It's just the assignment for these kids, and this one looks similar. So she can push them out so no one knows the difference, what comes across each student's different Google account. So, So
if they selected, for example, note taking, and then one of the options was to provide a partially filled note guide or something, I think there was something around that line. Then the gen ed teacher went ahead and just created that as they were creating materials. Awesome.
Yeah. So really, it's just for them to kind of think through it. Like I said, once you do it a few times, you start to, I think you just start to learn it. But it's just, it doesn't require us to sit next to them or look at it like, oh, here, just give it to me, I'll take care of it, you know what I mean? Or throw it to an assistant to take care of. It helps them kind of think the way a special educator thinks, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think bringing it back to center around those 1 to 3 key ideas, kind of gives them, like, they don't have to modify everything. Like, everything doesn't have to have 10,000 different options. It's just, what are those 1 to 3 things? And let's focus in on those and get the repetitions. I think that's really helpful for gen ed teachers too. Yeah, great. This is awesome. Other people have questions or comments?
I just really like that document, and I really want to use it in my own school system. So thank you for creating that. That was really helpful.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's great. Anybody else?
Yeah, it gave me a lot of ideas of what I can implement next year. I just can't start off gusto because I don't want to scare the other teachers. So, but I'm glad to see that.
Good. Great. Exciting stuff. Awesome. This is my favorite day in a long time. This has been so fun. We did this morning with the elementary. So, okay. Well, if there aren't any other, does anybody else have questions for Anna? All right. If not, then I think awesome job, Anna. Appreciate everything. And Nicolette, I believe you're up next.
All right. If you guys are ready, after I make it bigger. All right. So this is my presentation. It's about developing inclusive school climates. This is my second year at Little Wright Middle School. At the school town of Munster. Previously, I was in Chicago working for a variety of schools. I have over 15 years of experience as I'm certified both in Illinois and Indiana. And I really like, the best thing about working for Indiana right now is that I am 5 to 10 minutes away from my school, depending upon which school I'm going to for the day. And I like it a lot. Let me turn on my camera in case you guys want to see my lovely face. So again, my name is Nicolette Lesniak, and I am working for the school town of Munster, Little Wright Middle School. So when I first began this project, I really wanted to figure out why we should be doing a more of an inclusive environment within the school town of Munster. Before, they used to have a co-op, and this was the first year that the co-op was not part of the district. So I really wanted to look at whether or not, if we provide the training to the teachers to actually become more of a positive-based behavior approach, we'll stop getting referrals from the general education classrooms for special needs kids. Because if we all of the whole student body know how to de-escalate the kids, the students will be more likely to stay in their classrooms as well as get the support they need to better support each other and be able to reach their goals within the general education classroom environment. So what I did first is I really would look at my goals for the Capstone project. I wanted to figure out if my students, and not my students, if the staff, all staff, knew what the content connectors are. I wanted to know where they needed support at. I just didn't want to tell them, here's your support, and not be able to get the support they needed. And then make sure they have a goal that was aligned to the school district goals, as well as the school's goals, as well as the Department of Special Ed goals as well. And make sure there's a strong collaboration and with all teachers, as well as an embedded teacher plan. So what I did, I surveyed the staff, and I found out that 75% of the staff were not familiar with the content connectors. Like, okay, that's interesting. You know, they're aligned to Indiana academic standards. Why don't they know about the content connectors? Then I reached out to my admin. I was like, okay, could I see all the curriculum maps for the school? Because we're supposed to be looking at the curriculum maps and teaching from there. So could I possibly see them so I can make sure that the content connectors are aligned to the curriculum maps? I got the curriculum maps out of all the subject areas. I probably got about 6 curriculum maps, and I went down and looked at them. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a lot of work aligning on the content connectors. Let me just look at the classes that my students are in. So I focus on those particular classes first, that whatever they're working on for that particular subject area for that month or that quarter, and I line the Indiana standards up to the content connector. So the teachers could really look at it and see, okay, I'm asking the students to be able to analyze this text, but this child only has to figure out what the main idea of the text is. Then I also, after that, I figured out, okay, now I want to do the next step. I want to make sure that all of my students, all of the teachers, all parents, all stakeholders really figure out what is inclusion and where they want to get support in for helping their kids. And what I found really, really interesting is that 85% of the teacher body said they needed more support with social and behavioral learning, and evidence-based practices support and learning. Because they said that when a student's in their classroom and they are doing the work and whatever else, and all of a sudden the student has a full-blown behavior, or the student gets out of their seat and lays on the floor, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do in order to help that student. So they're at an odds. So the first thing they do is go ahead and call admin or call me to come down there to help a student get back on track. What I also found was interesting is that they also said they needed support with writing, math, as well as AT and how to use accommodations within their classroom. So the action plan going forward, what I had to do is I had to really make sure that I was participating with all the learning communities. So that was started. We did PLC. So every time there is a PLC meeting that one of my students are in, I'm also in that PLC meeting. So sometimes I might have 3 to 4 PLC meetings a week, depending upon what content areas are being met. We are also as a team aligning the content connectors with the academic standards on the curriculum maps and lesson plans. And it's different because not all teachers use lesson plans. Some of them just use the curriculum maps, or some use lesson plans. So it just depends upon each teacher. It's not required of us to submit our lesson plans. And then I also developed an embedded teaching plan, which I'll go over for next school year, to really help our teachers to be able to support those students who are struggling. And it's not just for the students who are in intensive needs, but also as well as students who are special ed who are functioning at a lower level, or a student who's going through RTI process who's functioning at a lower level. And I need that more descriptive support to be able to help them out in their classes. And then I am creating and sharing out PD so all individuals can reflect on their practice and then have those critical conversations of how to support all learners in their classroom and not with inclusion and differentiation. So here's some examples of the plan, which I'm going to show a bigger plan out so you guys can see it. It's a create short teaching episodes with ongoing classroom activities and routines. So it's basically something that I do in my classroom, but I'm just spilling it out to general education classes as well. So they would have those individual learning objects, and learning targets. So I spelled here wrong. Go ahead and share that with you guys. Let me exit this, move something over. Here you go. So this is an example of a plan, and it's also going to be in a Google form as well for this teachers to fill out when they feel comfortable. But right now I sit down with them to figure out what the plan is. And we do the instructional objective for that particular student. And so this student is during science class, when he's faced a difficult situation or a task, he'll be able to require assistance. And it lists all the instructional opportunities where the student can learn that skill. It also lists where they can also do it with reading tasks, worksheets, and collaboration. And then I give the teachers an example of how it'll be taught to the student. So difficult for discrimination, the teacher can point to where the correct answer can be found or point to where the area of where they need to go. It could be for not having the correct materials, it can be unclear directions and instructions. A lot of my students, when they don't know what to do or their directions are unclear, that's when they end up having behaviors, or if they're told two different things at the same time. So the assistance strategy for them would be, it's all spelled out, say, what do you want? And you can point to the lamp device and you can wait 3 seconds. And then you can do again, say, what do you want? And now the teacher is pointing to the help icon or whatever icon that the student is trying to ask for. And then again, do it, say, what do you want? And provide a physical assistance or model it. So in my classroom, a lot of times I have to say, okay, do you need help with that? And I model it by pointing on the student's lamp device saying, help please, or I need, or I want, depending upon what the student needs. And then for the reinforcement procedure, just giving them that physical good job signs up in the air, or we're saying excellent all the time, or we're saying, you're doing a wonderful job. And then if they do end up having a behavior like some of my students do, go up to them in a nice kind voice and say, let's ask to help, and then model them asking for help, or let's get off the floor and ask for help. So just so those things are being able to be going across all environments, and it's not just being done in one particular classroom. So I want to be able for them to be able to transfer over those skills so they can actually be ready for high school. That is it. I know it might seem a little bit short, but my first presentation was like 90 pages, and I was told that it was too long because I embedded a lot of stuff in there about videos and everything else, but I'm using that later on for our staff PD. So do you guys have any questions or anything?
Thank you so much, Nicolette. This is amazing. Can you scroll back up to the top of that for just a second?
Yeah.
You say this again, like you guys do not give yourselves enough credit. Like you said, this seems like just like not as much, but this in and of itself right here is huge. There's so much embedded into this one document. So is this just so I can clarify it, this is, you create this document for each student, for each class, and then the teachers can apply it to their lesson plannings as they're planning lessons. Is that how this tool is utilized?
Yeah, so say if I have a student who's in science class and they're doing atoms. So I'm going to write the instructional objective on the top is for them to be able to identify the number of atoms, whatever the grade level one is. And I'm going to slowly break it down for them so they'll be able to master that objective.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's amazing.
So it's developed in PLCs and then we roll it out once it's all done.
So a couple of follow-up questions. Again, this is incredible. I love that you started with the data and that you did that survey and you're focusing like all of your like how you determined your needs and on data, and then like that informed your next steps. I am curious about the one that you have highlighted where there were some needs, or yeah, that one around the support, evidence-based support in reading, writing, and math. And this is not this isn't directly related to your project. It's just me being curious. But what type of supports are provided in those areas for gen ed teachers in general? Like, was this a point of conversation with like your teaching and learning or curriculum department that they're asking for like content specific supports? Or do you think this was more about the students' needs?
This is more for the students' needs, I believe. I just went, I'm sorry, my thing feels like it's echoing. I just went and surveyed the teachers and say, where do you need support at? You know, in regards to reading, writing, math, social emotional learning. Do you know more about this? Do you know what's going on? So I did not send it to any of the curriculums. It was teachers or curriculum departments. It was just specifically for the teachers within the building.
Okay. I was just curious, like if teachers are, you know, for example, if you send this to an ELA teacher, are they saying they need support in reading and writing because they're not understanding that, like, they already have those skills, they're reading teachers and they're just not understanding how to apply it for students with more significant needs. That was completely just curious, what they were thinking, what your thinking was there.
Yeah. It was more for the intensive needs students. So it's like, okay, so next year the push is to get more of my students in your classrooms. Where do you need the support at to better support them? Because it's really hard for me to run around to 8 different classrooms within one period. Yes. It can't work that way.
You can't be in all the places at all the same time.
Yeah. I try, but I can't.
Yeah, no, I think it's great that you have the data to use, and you know, over time you'll be able to see that those numbers are going to go down because you're providing really great PD and tools and resources for them to implement. So that's awesome. Oh, the other thing that I wondered is you mentioned that you were able to go and get the curriculum maps, and I think that's very brave of you to take that work on by yourself, because I know how tedious it can be to try to align the content connectors. Some districts don't have as established curriculum maps as you must in Munster. Do you have any advice for people who would just be starting that process?
It's really important that you work as a team to figure out what it's going to be. And just what I do a lot is I just walk into a general education classroom, like on my prep. I'll just come and say hi and figure out what you guys are doing today and what's going on. You know, I like doing that approach and always sending out emails, but also too, last school year, we had to do curriculum map. So that was one of the things that were their deliverables by the end of the school year. So I knew already that admin had them somewhere. So I just emailed and emailed and emailed until I got a response.
Yeah. That's good. That's good advice, to work collaboratively. All right, I'll stop talking. Others have questions or thoughts or feedback for Nicolette?
Okay, I will stop sharing.
Get a couple comments in the chat box. Yeah. Is that Google Doc, is that something you've shared out with others in your district? Like other teachers?
Well, I'm the only intensive needs teacher in my building.
Oh, yeah.
But I am sharing it out with the rest of the team. So.
Okay. Awesome. Anything else for Nicolette? Good work. Good work. All right. So last but not least, we have Megan. And I think, I'll give you a couple minutes to get set up, and you just give us the cue when you're ready to go. Did you want me to share your presentation, or
no? I haven't. Right. So I am Megan Monahan. I am from Portage High School. I work for the Porter County Educational Services. through the co-op. My capstone project is a professional development that will be given to all the teachers at my school. I'm actually planning to do this professional development during our summer series. So it's titled Strategies for the Inclusive Classroom and Extracurricular Events. This was geared towards the high school level. I'm the applied skills teacher at the high school, one of them. So I put this together because I felt like there's a need for a push for more inclusion for applied life skills students. So I put this together. So the school information, Portage High School, as a township, we serve 7,000 plus students. We have 60 plus athletic teams and extracurricular activities students can join. We are a one-to-one technology school and have roughly 130 teachers at the high school. So I sent my survey out and unfortunately only had 40 complete out of the 130 teachers we have. So this is kind of why I put together the professional development, is to get this topic of inclusion on more teachers' minds and kind of go in a more positive way to benefit all of our students. So when I gave the survey, the questions I asked were, do you know what content connectors are? 33 out of 40 said no. I had someone respond that if it was applying to real life situations, then yes, they do that daily, which is not what content connectors do. We also had the question of, do you use content connectors in the classroom? 35 out of 40 said no. Would you be interested in the professional development on content connectors? 29 out of the 40 said yes. Have you heard of what Project Success does in Indiana? 33 said no. Are you interested in learning about it? 32 said yes. Are you involved in extracurriculars? 23 said yes. And when asked if they serve students with disabilities in their extracurriculars, I believe it was 13 out of the 40 said yes. Some of the responses there were a little alarming, which is why this whole project was put together for my district, was because they weren't sure if they were serving students with disabilities or not outside of the classroom on their teams. So this is all about? Oh, sorry. And where do we go? The goal is to have inclusive practices that serve students with disabilities in settings that challenge and promote success. Information was collected from the survey here at the high school and is shared through professional development opportunities. So it's geared towards getting students with significant disabilities involved, included, and offering more for this population of students. So some teams that they are on here at the high school are Science Olympiad, softball, Sparkle, which is partnered with our cheerleading team. We have a unified track team now. They're involved in theater, football, JROTC, esports, unified track, cross country. There's a dance academy here in town that offers dance classes for individuals with disabilities, and swimming. So these are just a few that we have students already on these teams, but would like to open up to more extracurricular activities, seeing that we have 60 plus different opportunities for them to be part of. Whether it's being a member of the team, managing the team, helping out, volunteering, getting them some sort of inclusion is where we are going. So what is inclusion? Inclusion is being welcoming, supportive of diverse academics, social, emotional, and meeting the needs of all of our students. This means inclusive groups, differentiated tasks, and planning curriculum for them. It means integrating them, not excluding them. A lot of times what I experience is that I'm an applied skills teacher, so when there's an issue in a general education setting, they automatically come to me or go straight to admin without trying to alleviate the issues in the classroom. So this is to help promote inclusion, what it looks like, and what you can do as an education teacher to help promote this. So it is for students with disabilities to go to the general education classrooms with support as needed. I've included this video. It's by Dr. Lee and Jung. It focuses on how my students are your students and our students as a whole. So it talks about inclusive practices, how to get a mindset shift to become more inclusive. So it's an hour and 15 minutes. Obviously, we don't have time to go over the whole video, but it really highlights the idea of being inclusive and how you get other teachers on board with becoming, this is all of our students, not just mine or yours. So some classroom management ideas I have for some of my general education peers was to provide set rules, give visuals, have group work, provide different kinds of seating in the classroom, have a cool down space, practice social skills, and set signals to help when you are transitioning. We also use bins, folders for work, or sometimes have our mailboxes for them as well. So, how do we teach these interpersonal skills? You have to role model, you have to have them complete back to school, get to know each other activities, allow for the group projects, and help them identify emotions. And we also do a daily check in with how they feel. So, we ask them what color they're on today. Those are things that could be done in the general education setting that are simple things to check in with them and see how they are doing as an individual as well. So, some social skills, things they could do is turn it into a game, allow for interactions among their peers, allow them to work together and present as a group. Again, give choices, model the manners, set expectations of how to treat others in the classroom, and depending the age level, assign classroom jobs. So teaching skills to manage behavior. So a lot of times, again, if there's a behavior in a general education setting, they send them down to the applied skills classrooms instead of managing the behaviors in their own classrooms. So this is to teach them how to identify their emotions, set guidelines in their classroom or at semester change, give positive praise, allow them to self-correct behaviors, teach them positive behaviors and coping mechanisms, give them a fidget item, give them schedules if they're changing, open and communicate changes with them as soon as possible. And again, having sensory items in the room, stuff that they're able to do independently at their own desk. So some types of learning environments. Each student learns differently. Prepare them for auditory, visual, and hands-on learners. Keep it clean and organized in the classroom. Eliminate distractions. Interact with your students every day, right away, and allow for them to move around the room. So how do we collaborate? We should break down our task. We could set up the centers or the stations, provide warm up or exit tickets for the class, and give them opportunities to think, pair, share, and together. They should never be isolated at a desk by themselves. They should be integrated in the classroom at all times. So again, setting up different stations. I said stations for math or science, doing a reader's theater for the English classrooms as well. So how do we be inclusive? Again, setting up desk. No students are alone or isolated. Be engaging, keep all of them on task and progressing, give them choices and allow for them to have self-expression and have them self-lead the classroom at times too, sort of like a flipped classroom. We also teach self-advocacy skills. So teach them how to speak up when they need help, role model it, teach them to be independent and accountable for their work. Project-based learning helps a lot of students as well. It's engaging and has deep, long-lasting impacts. You are to give roles to your students, allow them to show creativity, and teach them self-determination skills to stay on task, complete their part, and be included in a group. A lot of times, a lot of the applied skills students have not been part of a team or a group. So when we push them out, we really want them to be included, have a role, and be engaged in their learning as well. Another thing is creating the multicultural classroom. Get to know your students. Research and take advantage of other professional developments to learn how to be culturally aware. Embrace diversity. Don't allow for racism in the classroom. Set clear expectations on how to respect one another in the classroom setting. By allowing things in the classroom, students think it's okay. So you have to really role model for them what is expected and what will not be tolerated in the classroom. So the idea of this is to explain to the other general education colleagues what Project Success in Indiana does. So I've included the link. I've also included the definition and information from Project Success itself on what they do. I also included the link from Project Success, which I've used a lot. It's resources for teachers to use in the classroom to help align the content and use the content connectors. And some of these are free and some are not. So I put this link in there for people to be able to go back and reflect on and use those different resources for them as well. So how do we align the content? So exposing them to the content connectors to align to state standards. If the state has them, use them and make them accessible. The content connectors are also the state standards, just broken down into smaller components. You're still teaching the same content, just at a slower pace, and it allows for all learners to be up to speed and helps align the content. So in my school district, we're working on high reliability school. So we're trying to get there and do proficiency scales and align our assessments to all be similar. So what I've done personally is I've taken the content from all the different departments that we work with, and I've pulled their proficiency scales and standards that they have selected as the top priority. And I started using our content connectors to align to that. So when I do this professional development, my goal is to show them how it aligns from their side and the special education component, and how we could work together to put those into a general education setting for all students to be successful. So again, I've included some resources that are helpful for some of the students that are in the applied skills classroom, such as ReadWorks, Storytime Online, ABCya, Kahoot. I've also again included Project Success and then Prodigy Math. Those are just a few we use that they could also use in a general education setting. So my call to action to the staff will be, how will you be more inclusive? What would you like to see in our school? Allow them to research and look at Project Success website, and allow them to ask questions. The goal moving forward for next year will be to have that action plan for the content connectors. Sorry for the bell. And then teach them how to align their content if they need to, and reach out to and find a small cohort of teachers that are willing to take in more applied skills students to their general education classroom. So this was really just a professional development to expose them to what content connectors are in Project Success, to get them on board to eventually use the content connectors in their own classroom, and show them how that aligns using the template of unpacking as well. But that is all I have, and I've included the resources I've used as well. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Right.
That was a lot.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. I don't know if I've ever seen that many evidence-based practices covering such a wide variety of areas, everything from project-based learning, SEL, to academics, behavior. Like, that is truly amazing. Like, just an incredible amount of information that are things that are helpful, right? Like, they're useful tips that teachers can apply that support students. So I think that's great. It's going to be a really great PD. One of the things I wanted to circle back to, because I just am curious. That's the name of the day. That's what I am, right? I'm curious. I just ask random questions. But you mentioned extracurricular, and as you were going through the different strategies, so many of those, having been involved in extracurricular sports and activities and coaching, like, so many of those things you're teaching are going to strengthen that process as well. So I'm just wondering, like, what have you seen that already? Like, have you seen an increase in teachers that are willing, or yeah, go ahead.
My personal experience was, when I first started, I really wanted a student. I'm thinking of a particular student. I wanted him to manage a team, but I got really pushed back from that person that was in charge of it. So I kind of put this together in hopes that, like, this will turn on a light for some of those that are in extracurriculars to be more inclusive. But I also know that they're creating, like, different teams, and especially with Unified Track, yes, it's students with disabilities, but now we have general education peers working with them, and you can't tell a difference of who's who. So it's a very integrated group. So I'm hoping that we get more of those kind of extracurriculars here at the school system. So yes, we're moving in the right direction, but we still have a lot of room to grow.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great, though, because what you're doing to support inclusive practices in the classroom, those are the same things that they're going to need for extracurricular. So yeah, that's a great tie-in.
When I first started here too, I've only been here for 3 years. I'm in the middle of my master's program. I just finished my elementary licensing. So I actually am working on an emergency permit, but I'm going to be done this November. But when I first started, they didn't really have a whole lot. They didn't really, I mean, we were very segregated. So we've come a long way. We have a lot to go. But we also, they had a lot of teams that were just applied skills students. So like, we're going to create a team and it's only going to be students with disabilities. That's not the idea of inclusion. Like putting them in their own group is still not being inclusive. So this is to bring this to light to the teachers and hopefully have a mindset shift. And that going forward, we will have more teams wanting our students to be on the team, help manage it, and do different aspects outside of the classroom setting.
Yeah, I love that holistic approach too. It is an inclusive community, right? It's not a classroom or a building, it's the whole package. So yeah, that's great. What's your plan for rolling out the PD? Like what is that? Have you already provided it or like or follow-ups?
So I'm going to be doing this same section in a summer series that will be
the
whole township. So not just the high school, it will be to the whole district as a whole. This summer they have like a 3-day thing we do every year. So I offer this. And then I'm also going to go back and include the unpacking the template so they could see that visual as well and what that looks like and how to take now this professional development back to their own classroom settings.
Yep. Yeah, I love how intentional you've been about thinking, okay, they need exposure, they need a foundation, but the end goal is this, and the end goal is the unpacking and the curriculum mapping, but we're going to start with some bite-sized pieces that they can implement. So that's great. All right, anyone else have questions or follow-ups for Megan?
Well, thank you for letting me present. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.